My name's Josh Barron. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I love working with clients who've been referred to me. The purpose of this series of videos is to help you to build referral relationships consciously, regularly, steadily, so that you can depend on them. I have been practicing law since 2007. I've had lots of different sort of versions of my practice, and for many years I relied 100% on advertising. For many years I spent tens of thousands of dollars, up to about $35,000 a month on Google AdWords. And that created a business that I enjoyed, that I appreciated. I'm glad that I went through that process, but at the same time, it created a lot of problems for my practice. I had to have lots of employees to handle all of the cases, and I had to do tens of thousands of dollars of work for clients every month before I could start to pay my own bills and pay myself. So I, in 2020, made a transition that was forced by COVID. I don't know that I would have ever had the courage to make the switch without a national, global emergency. But because the courts were closed, we had to shut off our ads because we would have just been shoveling money out with no revenue to make up for it. So in March of 2020, we shut off our ads, and for a couple of months, honestly, the phone didn't ring. Everybody was concerned with other things. But by that summer, June-ish, we started getting calls and we had no ads. And so I decided, well, I'm gonna see how this goes. And I didn't know if June was a fluke, July wasn't a fluke, August wasn't a fluke. By the fall, we started to realize we probably never have to turn our ads back on. But I had started a process in 2017 when my business partner retired, and I thought about what kind of practice do I want to have. I started to try to consciously learn how to build referral relationships. So instead of just relying on luck that hopefully I would get some occasional referrals, really consciously trying to build those relationships with other people. Those relationships have enriched my life. They've helped my practice grow, and they've helped my practice be much closer to something that I'm just delighted to work in every day. So I hope that sharing these ideas about how you can build referral relationships will help you build a practice that you love. So one of the reasons that referrals should be part of your marketing mix is because referrals don't scale. And a lot of people might think, well, don't I want something that scales? Everybody's talking about trying to scale up and scale their business. And it depends on what we mean by scale. My sort of technical definition of scale is something that you can do once and then sell 1 billion times. So Facebook can make one version of its software and its algorithm and then can sell it to everyone on the planet. It doesn't really cost more if they sell it to everyone. Criminal defense isn't like that. Every client you serve costs you more time, costs you support staff. So you really have to do things that don't scale in order to be able to find your ideal clients. Another example is advertising. Coca-Cola can make one billboard and then put it on 1 million billboards throughout the United States. But if you're a criminal defense lawyer, and you start to go into those scalable arenas like billboards, then you're competing with every other billboard consumer in the world. So we want to do something that has a high probability of working if we want to make sure that we're going to feed our families and meet our financial goals. So the fact that criminal defense referrals don't scale is actually a benefit. Criminal defense referrals come from relationships that you build one-to-one with individual people. And so once you have built that relationship, Coca-Cola can't come in and steal that relationship. You can maintain that relationship. Obviously, you can't take them for granted. They could go away. But you're doing something that someone with $1 billion can't just buy. They would have to come in and spend the time one-to-one to make those relationships. So the fact that criminal defense referrals don't scale is actually a benefit that makes it so that you don't have to compete with every other criminal defense lawyer in your state or in the whole country, or if big tech companies come into our space. One-to-one relationships aren't scalable, and that's actually a benefit. Another challenge with advertising is something that Seth Godin calls the auction problem. The auction problem is that once you and I know what the value of a particular customer or client is, if we can bid on that customer through Google AdWords or through billboards or any other paid advertising, then you and I will basically bid up to the benefit of that customer. So an example that he uses is that a coffee shop in a really busy section of Manhattan is no more or less profitable than a quiet suburban Starbucks, because the landlord who owns the property in Manhattan knows the value of that property and holds a functional auction. Sometimes it's not literally an auction, but people basically bid up the real estate cost for that location right up to the marginal benefit. So one might be way busier than the other, but the profit goes mostly to the landlord, not to Starbucks and not to the customers. So when you are competing for clients on AdWords or using billboards or any other advertising method, radio, once people know what the value is of the customers that are coming through that method, then they will bid up to the marginal value of that tool or that path. So the only way to compete effectively is to either have way lower costs than other people who are bidding for the same clients, or have a way to get more value from those clients than someone else by charging much, much higher prices. So what's great about one-to-one relationships is, again, they can't be auctioned. They can't be easily bought. They're sticky. Once you create that kind of relationship, it tends to stay. You have to work to maintain it. You shouldn't take it for granted, but it tends to stay. And that's a benefit because you don't want some well-funded competitor to be able to come in and just take your entire market. So if you invest the time and the resources and the energy into making a great experience for your referral partners, then those are long-term advantages. I think Warren Buffett would call it like a moat against competitors. Whereas if you're just paying for advertising, somebody else who's willing to pay more for the advertising can steal that same advantage. So we've talked a little bit about some of the disadvantages of advertising and traditional marketing versus word-of-mouth referral relationships. Now I want to talk about one of the biggest advantages of working with people who've been referred to you. I get lots of calls, and I have gotten lots of calls through my practice for people who just find me on the internet or see an old ad that maybe I don't pay for anymore. And it's night and day difference in terms of talking to somebody who has been recommended to me. A lot of times the person that recommended them to me has no financial incentive. I don't pay referral fees. So it's a sincere, genuine referral from someone that hopefully this person trusts. Sometimes it's a lawyer that they don't know very well that they called, but a lot of times it's like a family member or somebody very close to them. So by the time they call me, they aren't so much trying to decide if I'm a good attorney or if they can trust me. They're pre-sold on that. It's just a question of, am I going to take this client and do they feel comfortable with me? So like 80% of the sale is already done by the time they call me on the phone. So I call that sort of vouching. The person who is sending the referral is vouching for me and saying, Josh Barron does a good job at this, you should call him, or I've used him before and he's done great work for my clients. And the fact that that's sincere and organic is irreplaceable. So people know they've gotten more and more immune to ads as our society has become saturated with ads. We know that if we see an ad, it's not real information that we can necessarily trust. But when someone we know says, you should use this attorney, I trust him, he does a good job or she does a good job, it is a massive vouching for you that you can use, and it makes the sales conversation much easier. So vouching makes a massive difference, and once you have spoken to clients who've been recommended to you, you want to figure out how can I do as much of that as possible, because trying to go from no trust to lots of trust in a sales conversation is much more difficult than someone who's already come to you vouched by someone they trust. So that's one of the biggest advantages of referral relationships, and one of the reasons that I'm so sold on maximizing the personal referrals that you receive.